Have you ever met someone who made you feel like you were the only person in the world who mattered, and they did it so fast it almost took your breath away? One week you're strangers, and the next they're texting you at midnight with paragraphs about how you've changed their life. They remember every detail you mentioned in passing. They make grand gestures that feel ripped from a movie scene. And for a moment, maybe a few weeks or months, you're floating. You feel chosen. You feel special. But then something shifts. The intensity that once felt like sunlight starts to feel like heat from a fire that's burning too close. And you're left wondering, was any of it real? Love bombing isn't just about giving too much affection too soon. It's about the why behind it. It's about what's happening beneath the surface in someone's heart and mind when they pour themselves into you with such overwhelming force. And here's what we don't talk about enough. Most people who love bomb aren't monsters. They're not sitting in dark rooms plotting manipulation. They're often just broken people who learned that the only way to feel safe in connection is to make it so intense, so all-consuming that no one could possibly leave. They're building a fortress of affection, brick by desperate brick, hoping that if they give enough, love enough, prove enough, they'll finally be enough. Let's go deeper into the psychology of this. When someone love bombs, they're often operating from a place called anxious attachment. This is a pattern that usually forms in childhood when a caregiver's love felt inconsistent or unpredictable. Maybe they had a parent who was there one moment and emotionally absent the next. Maybe they learned that love had to be earned through perfect behavior, constant achievement, or emotional caretaking. So they grew up believing that connection is fragile, that people leave unless you make yourself indispensable. Fast forward to adulthood, and that little kid is still inside them, terrified of abandonment, trying to control the narrative before it can hurt them. The love bombing isn't really about you. It's about their fear wearing a mask of devotion. There's also something happening in the brain that makes this pattern almost addictive for both people involved. When someone showers you with intense affection, your brain releases dopamine and oxytocin, the chemicals associated with pleasure, bonding, and reward. It feels incredible. It feels like coming home. But when that intensity is manufactured too quickly, your brain doesn't have time to build the neural pathways for sustainable love. You're essentially getting high on the chemistry of infatuation without the foundation of real intimacy. And the person doing the love bombing, they're often getting the same high from being needed, from feeling like a hero in your story, from the power of watching you light up because of them. It becomes a feedback loop where both people are chasing a feeling, not building a relationship. But here's where it gets complicated, where the darkness starts to seep in. Some people love bomb because they're genuinely manipulative. They've learned that overwhelming someone with affection early on makes that person more likely to overlook red flags later. It's a strategy, conscious or unconscious, to create emotional debt. If I've made you feel this special, this loved, this seen, then when I start showing my true colors, when the criticism comes, or the control tightens, or the emotional withdrawal begins, you'll work harder to get back to those early days. You'll blame yourself for the shift. You'll think maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're not grateful enough. Maybe you need to try harder. And that's the trap. The early intensity wasn't love. It was an investment in your compliance. Yet not everyone who love bombs is manipulative in that calculated way. Some people do it because they're genuinely overflowing with emotion and haven't learned how to regulate it. They feel everything at maximum volume. When they like you, they're obsessed. When they're hurt, they're devastated. Their emotions don't have a dimmer switch. These are often people who struggle with emotional regulation, sometimes tied to conditions like borderline personality disorder or complex trauma. They're not trying to trap you. They're trying to express something so big inside them that it spills out in ways that feel overwhelming to everyone around them. They need help learning that love doesn't have to be an explosion to be real. The saddest part about love bombing is what it reveals about our collective hunger for connection. We live in a world where genuine intimacy feels rare, where people are guarded, and dating feels like a series of interviews. So when someone shows up with no walls, with pure enthusiasm, with declarations of how special you are, it's like water in a desert. We want to believe it. We need to believe it. And that's what makes us vulnerable. We mistake intensity for intimacy. We confuse someone's need to be needed with someone actually seeing us. And by the time we realize the difference, we're already tangled up in something that doesn't feel good anymore, but feels too hard to leave. So how do you know the difference between someone who's genuinely excited about you and someone who's love bombing? It comes down to consistency and respect for pace. Real love builds. It might have moments of intensity, but it also has moments of calm, of space, of letting you breathe. Someone who truly cares about you will want to know you at a sustainable pace. They'll respect your boundaries instead of trying to bulldoze through them with grand gestures. They'll be interested in your reality, not just the fantasy version of you they've built in their head. And most importantly, they won't make you feel like you owe them something for their affection. Love shouldn't feel like debt. If you've been love-bombed, or if you're realizing you might be someone who does it, there's no shame in that recognition. It's actually the beginning of healing. For those who've been on the receiving end, understand that it wasn't about your worth. You didn't do anything wrong by wanting to be loved. And for those who recognize themselves as the love bomber, know that your capacity for deep feeling isn't a flaw. You just need to learn that real connection doesn't require fireworks every single day. It requires showing up consistently, honestly, and giving people room to choose you without drowning them in your need to be chosen. The question isn't whether you've experienced this. Most of us have, on one side or the other. The real question is, are you ready to build something slower, quieter, and infinitely more real? Because that's where the actual magic lives, not in the explosion, but in the steady flame that keeps burning long after the sparks have faded. What kind of love are you ready to choose?